white, I didn't truly understand racism. I lived in this perfect little bubble where everyone was treated equally. But my senior year of high school, I popped that bubble because I started researching politics and more importantly, or more specifically, white privilege. So according to Peggy McIntosh, white privilege is the invisible package of unearned assets one gets for simply just being white in America. And contrary to popular belief, having white privilege and even understanding that you have white privilege does not make you racist. I will first explain in better detail what white privilege is, followed with some examples, and then also how it can become systemic racism. So like I said, white privilege is the invisible package of unearned assets one gets in America for being white. And it's okay to not know exactly what white privilege is at our age, because in Peggy McIntosh's article titled White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, whites are carefully taught to not understand white privilege just as they're carefully taught the whitewashed version of the American history. Furthermore, the term white privilege can have a negative connotation to some people, and according to Corey Collins in his 2018 article, What is White Privilege Really? It kind of has a double whammy effect because one, white people are not really used to being defined by their race, and then two, the word privilege makes some people that might not be as successful feel like they're not being accounted for, but even people white people that might be living below the poverty line are still 2 steps ahead of minorities in the same boat as them. And so to truly understand how white privilege works, you need to understand how it affects people of color in an everyday instance to extreme measures. So one example I like to give when I'm trying to explain white privilege to someone is skin tone band-aids. For me, a skin color band-aid fits perfectly on my skin, but because they don't come in a variety of skin tones, say someone is black, it does not work for them. And very similarly to that is a birth control patch, which also only comes in one shade. And then a little bit bigger, white privilege is not worrying about someone following you around a store because just based on your skin tone, they think that you're going to steal something. Or getting pulled over by a cop just based off the color of your skin. And also, white privilege is when you ask to speak to a manager, you know that, or you can be rest assured that you're probably going to be speaking to someone of the same skin color as you. And then my last example is that when I go get new hair products, I go to the store and there's an entire aisle that will totally work for my hair, but then if someone who has curly hair, they have to go somewhere in a really small section called ethnic hair products. And so these are all called power of normal. And so power of normal is defined as when white is considered the normal skin tone in America. And that is a very racist idea because there is no normal skin tone. We're a melting pot of cultures and ethnicities. So like I said, white privilege can turn into systemic racism. And to explain systemic racism, I need to first define racism. So racism is the discrimination of another race based on one's race is superior. And so systemic racism is when these racist beliefs are carried out by a group with power, whether it be a government, a school, or some kind of organization. And to further your knowledge of systemic racism, I'm going to be talking about 3 examples: the housing, unemployment rate, and the wage gap. So first, housing has always been a struggle in America for African Americans. And in her 1997 book titled Critical White Studies, Martha R. Mahoney states that racist segregation has always been prominent in America, whether it was the 30s, the 40s, or the 50s, and even into the 21st century. This is due to federal companies like the Homeowners Loan Company and the Federal Housing Authority, who would not give loans to black people so they could buy a house. And it segregated, they would give loans to whites so they can live somewhere, but then the black people couldn't afford to live there, so they had to live somewhere that was much cheaper, and it usually tended to be the inner city. And the inner city is also very economically depressed, meaning that there's not enough jobs there for the amount of people that live there, and that still has impacts on African Americans today. So here is the Baltimore demographics from 2010. So the white population is represented by the red dots, the black population is represented by the blue dots, and then green is Asian, and that's only right there. But as you can see, even in 2010, the inner city it tends to be more African American, while the whites live more on the outskirts where they can afford to. And going hand in hand with an economically depressed area is high unemployment rates. In his article titled Unemployment Rates Vary by Race by David Andolfo, he found that unemployment rates for blacks were 34% higher than Hispanics, 93% higher than whites, and 104% higher than Asians. And in another study by National Academy of Sciences, done in 2017, they found that the employment rates for blacks has not changed since 1989. So, although our country has progressed racially in some aspects, African Americans are still not getting the jobs they deserve since in the same way as they were in the 1989. In another article titled 200 Years of White Affirmative Action by Brianne Hasty, she says that in too many quarters, best qualified means that the applicant has the same skin tone as a manager. Or another notable similarity that they like. And then also going along with the unemployment rate is the wage gap. Going back, sorry. So this is the unemployment rate from January 2000 to December 2016. And as you can see, whether it be the no high school diploma, the high school diploma, or the bachelor's degree, black is represented by orange. It's always higher than every other race over this period of time. And so, like I said, wage gap goes in hand with the unemployment rate. And most people know the wage gap as in between genders. So it's kind of commonly known that the wage gap for a white woman and a white man is a woman makes around 80 cents to a man's dollar. But in her 2016 article titled Racial Gender Wage Gaps in U.S. Despite Some Progress, Eileen Patton states that blacks in 2015 earned 75% of what whites make. And so here you can see that white men had had higher hourly earnings than all except Asian men in 2015. So for white men, that makes $21 an hour. Black men only made $15, while Hispanics only made $14. And then for women, you can see. So, like I said earlier, white people tend to get defensive or sort of fearful of the term white privilege, and so this can manifest into physical groups as a sort of retaliation. And Dr. John D. Rich Jr. in his article "The Reality of Whiteness," published in 2017, states two examples of this happening. So his first example was that the All Lives Matter group was created in retaliation to the Black Lives Matter group, and then secondly, changing the idea of kneeling for the national anthem due to injustice to disrespecting our troops and our flag. But it's really important for these minority groups to have these movements like the Black Lives Matter, because it draws attention to how they feel about the white privilege being placed on them, and also draws attention to white privilege in general for people that might not actually understand it completely. So like I said earlier, once again, white privilege is the invisible package of unearned assets one gets for simply being white in America. I hope you guys all got a better understanding of white privilege and how it affects minority groups, and also how systemic racism has always been affecting minority groups. And maybe in the future, when your white privilege is working for you, you'll take a step back and realize that's what